And at the end, the producer just said, you know, this character, this elf, is wonderful. Does he have a name? And without missing a beat, I said, Charcoal. Well, he fell on the floor and started laughing so hard and saying, Charcoal the elf, Charcoal the elf. It's incredible. You've got to run with this. You've got to run with it.
Welcome to Never Too Late, Real Stories of Reinvention. I'm Eric Cooter, and on each episode of NTL, I sit down with people who've taken a leap, changed direction, or found meaning in unexpected ways. These are stories of hope, resilience, and courage, and they serve as reminders that no matter where we are in life, it's never too late to begin again. Well, welcome listeners to another episode of NTL, Stories of Re-invention. I have the joy of speaking with a new friend of mine, R.A. Bellson. R.A. is a Brooklyn-born storyteller. He is a videographer. I can't speak tonight. Sorry, videographer.
Perfect.
He's a professional singer and pianist. Wow, I didn't realize that. That's something new that I didn't know. He's a historic preservation advocate, another great, awesome thing that he does. And he's the author of the Charcoal the Elf fantasy trilogy. And we're going to speak a lot about that tonight. R.A. and I met and spoke recently before the holidays, and I'm just really excited about sharing his story. One that I think fits in well with the theme of what we're doing with the podcast. I think his is a story of what I would frame as creative convergence and an unexpected vocation as a writer. What do you think about that, R.A.?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah, unexpected in capital letters. Absolutely.
I
Yes.
gotcha. Well, it's such a joy to be with you. Anything you'd like to share about you? Well, we can jump in just a second. I'll go ahead and ask you a couple quick questions and kind of get
Well,
some
you've
background on you.
you've done a pretty good job there, bringing everybody. I always listen to that and say, how did I manage to do all that?
Mm,
And yeah,
I'm
yeah,
with you. If someone introduces me, I'm like, "Are you sure you're talking about me?"
exactly.
Well, it's good to have you on the podcast, RA.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Tell us. Let's start back a little bit, if we could, a little bit about growing up. And I think a lot of times, our early lives have a lot to do with who we are today. Of course, I mean that's just obvious. But tell us a little bit about growing up in Brooklyn
Mhm.
and the role of as a writer. You have to have quite a bit of imagination and maybe a bit of a storyteller, maybe at heart, or maybe you discover that later. But did imagination and maybe writing at all have any connection to your growing up in Brooklyn?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. The only thing I could think of that would fit in with that is that my parents and my sister, I come from a very educated family,
Mm-hmm.
and which was kind of atypical for the neighborhood I was growing up in at the time I was growing up in it. My father has two master's degrees, and reading was always, oh, please don't make me say fundamental, but reading was really considered an essential. And one of my fondest memories of my parents looking back now, with a completely different perspective than I had. My parents did not have a lot of money. I know they struggled to be able to afford to expose my sister and I to alternatives to city life. And my dad grew up on a mountain. My mom grew up in a fishing village.
Wow.
And so we would do the shore thing and the mountain thing every summer. And we would go on a lot of trips. My parents certainly made me aware of historic structures. And there was not a lot of money, as I said, but if I was ever sitting there thumbing through a book and just obviously absorbed in it, it was bought. And I'm sure that was a sacrifice for my parents. So books were held in very high esteem. I was read to very, very early in life, as was my sister. And as a result of that, our reading levels, tested, whatever that means, tested much higher than the norm for our age groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I can only think that that played a part in as I grew up and started a professional life. Um, I discovered, much to my surprise, that I tended to be very well spoken, but tended to be very well written.
Mm,
And in my work situations, I was asked to help with things like annual reports and president's speeches, presidents of the company I was working for. Uh, and people just remarked constantly on the ease with which I would throw a sentence together. And because it was easy for me, I didn't realize it was so difficult for other people.
sure, sure. Yeah, it's amazing how we have similar backgrounds. My although my parents were my mother was more educated than my father. My father actually never finished high school, but he
Wow.
was kind of a self-educated man. He taught himself
Mhm.
electronics and things like that. And so
And there's a lot to
he
be said for that.
you're
There,
not kidding. And that
yeah,
was a time where you could do that too, the
yeah,
back in those days. And but my mother was probably like your parents, they always had us reading something out. Do you remember the World Book encyclopedias, that
sure,
big
yes,
Sunday afternoons? There was nothing like going in a back room and just going through letter whatever and
uh-huh,
learning as much as
yeah,
you could. I'm like you. So, yeah.
yeah.
So you grew up with education and with reading and those things being very important values in your family and for you. Um, Tell me a little bit, if you would, or tell our listeners a little bit. As you were growing up, did you ever get any early ideas? What was your
Well, I
first
had a lot of
career?
ideas, lots of ideas.
Oh, I know, and they're manifesting now in this great series you're doing. Um, when you were in high school, and
Mhm.
we'll go past elementary school. In high school, was there a particular career field that started kind of catching your eye? Something you were
No,
thinking
you
about that
know
you wanted to do?
that's funny. It's funny. My parents always assumed I would go into music. I showed a really strong aptitude for the piano.
Hmm.
I just sort of sat down and started playing it, and lessons were sort of just, were obvious, were apparent. Uh, but again, I'd have to say that one of my Achilles heels is when something comes easily to me. I don't realize it's a talent. I don't realize it's anything special.
Mm,
And so as I was approaching college, it was just assumed I would go into music. I'd, try out for the music schools in the city and assuming I would be accepted to one of them. And I had no interest in that whatsoever. I was
mm,
very, very much at sea in terms of trying to come up with a major. So I studied mostly liberal arts in college
mhm,
because I just didn't know where else to go. But again, I was showing all of this aptitude um, applied for applied things. I was terrible in math, but I was great in applied math, and I
hmm.
was able
Oh,
to
okay.
do
Yeah.
shop and design things like that. But theory, forget about it. It was out the window. And again, it was obvious that I had these writing skills, so I sort of gravitated in that direction. But even when I graduated from college, my music teacher, who taught me both piano and then later on voice, became very famous herself.
Mm.
And she needed an associate in her singing studio, a voice studio, here not here, in the city.
Mhm.
And she invited me to become her associate at a very young age because she
Wow.
just basically told me, she said, RA, there's nobody else I know who I would trust with a person's throat as much as I trust you. So I kind of fell into that and I did uh, voice training,
Hmm.
singing technique for
Wow.
years before I sort of uh, diverged and spread out afterwards. And when I went back to school for a master's, I took it in education. So it just seemed
Wow.
like the obvious next step for me. You know,
Sure. So you've been a teacher at heart from an early age, it sounds
I
like.
guess that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm a teacher of flight, but as a retired Episcopal priest, I've taught theology and history and things like that as well. Um, but there's something about imparting knowledge or sharing something that you're passionate about with someone else, and the joy that you have as you see maybe the light bulbs come on in
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
as you're working through with them. Yeah,
And I don't have to tell you, I'm sure that one of the most powerful things I learned very early on when I was working on my master's in ed was that each individual, to a certain extent, has their own learning style. So just
absolutely.
because I'm giving them the information doesn't mean that they're receiving it.
Mhm.
So it becomes a challenge for the teacher to figure out what is the right access point for each
Mhm.
individual student. And
Absolutely.
when you're dealing with a whole mass of people, it doesn't work. And we all
Right.
know that that doesn't work. But when you're working one on one, the way I was working for many years, I'm still working with singing students now. Uh, you feel around for the right words so that, well, there you go. I had never
Mhm.
thought about this before, but you feel around for the right words so that they absorb what you're trying to give them. And
Right.
there you are. If I have this aptitude for writing, so again, I'm playing with a
Mhm.
sentence and playing with a phrase, trying to find just the right way to structure it so that it's not about me being happy, it's about the reader getting it.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so interesting you're saying that because I remember a communication course I took in college in my undergrad was business communication, and it was very clear as what you just said. And I've realized this in my own teaching is that communication is more about the receiver hearing, understanding, and internalizing the
Oh, yeah.
message more so
Oh,
than
yeah.
us just pushing it out there. So, and I
Yeah.
think in your book, as I start in that, I'm starting to realize that there's more going on than you telling a story, my friend. I think you're
Oh, very
you're
much
you're you're
so.
you're
Yes.
teaching in the midst of that, and I'll get into that more as
Okay.
we talk more about charcoal.
Sure.
All right, so you were talking a little bit about you did your undergrad. It was a liberal arts, is that right?
For the most part, yeah, with some specialized courses, but yeah.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
I graduated with a very broad education, but
Yeah,
direction
that's
is
well, yeah, or just kept you open to a lot of different avenues, I guess. So, what
Well, I
was?
will say, I'm sorry to cut
Go
you
ahead.
off, but I will
No,
say
go ahead.
one thing my parents forgot to tell me was pick something and stick to it.
Mm,
And, when you've got the kind of brain I have, what's that? What's that? What's that? And then when you've
right.
got it figured out, it's not interesting anymore, and you move on to the next thing,
Yeah.
which gave me a very broad knowledge base, but got me into a lot of trouble as well. So,
Well, we don't fit the mold of maybe at the time or maybe even now how our society works in terms of vocation is that there's you get into a path and you stay in the lane until you retire. But
gold
I'm fine.
watch. Yeah.
I'm yeah, but I'm doing some studying about as we get later in life how we start looking at streams of vocation rather than if you have 5 to 10 years left of work life is rather than one particular set structured way of finishing up your vocation is how can you bring in streams of vocation and identity that actually becomes more about aligning with who you are rather than sticking in with it. And I think that's interesting. And what you're talking about, the different interest areas that you have and things and how those streams of vocation kind of play out. But
Yeah.
anyway, it may or may not play. So, sorry, I just kind of took you down a bunny trail there. I
No, it
do
was
that quite
fun.
often. um, so you finished up with your undergrad. What was next for you?
Well, I was teaching,
Teaching, okay.
singing, and performing as well for quite a number of years before I decided to go back to graduate school. And I began to sense that I had kind of reached a dead end with teaching singing, and the profession was drying up to a certain degree
Hmm.
because fewer people were aspiring. Most of my students were and are Broadway bound, at least in their own minds. And it's just not as lucrative a profession anymore. So I realized I needed to start casting about and looking at other things. I went to, as I said, a graduate school for education, and they hired me immediately upon graduation, but they did not put me in a classroom, they put me in administration.
Oh.
because I showed an aptitude for management, for team building, for communication,
Hmm.
and which is
Applied mathematics.
applied math exactly. Yeah, applied bullshit. Oh, can I say that?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
And
Please.
and that's when the video began happening because I
Okay.
began working within the structure and I began wanting to develop professional development videos and intercommunications videos. I took several marketing courses in graduate school,
Hmm.
which were all electives. And I was hiring videographers, of which I was very, very frustrated. They just weren't producing what I wanted. I knew what I wanted, and a couple of times I just produced something myself. And then the famous, you should be doing this. So then it was back to school for a specialized certificate in videography.
Wow.
And I did that for 20 years, and it's only just now that I've pretty much hung up my camera because it's first of all, once again, the career has dried up because anybody with a phone thinks they're a
Sure.
videographer.
Right.
And so many of the phone calls for work I get nowadays is, can you fix this? And the answer is no, I can't. I'm sorry. You should have brought me in when you needed the raw footage, not
Right.
now.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then COVID came along. I'm jumping the gun
Uh,
here, but
no, you're
COVID,
fine.
COVID was a real knockout blow for me because my I was working for a video production studio based out of New York, and I was out in the field doing a lot of local work out in the field. And suddenly nobody was hiring anymore because everybody was afraid to walk out their front door.
Sure.
And I realized once again I was going to have to reinvent myself.
Yeah.
So I went into singing and perform. I mean, I had a background in performing arts as a kid, as do so many kids. I just happened to be, pretty good at it. So I'm a performer and a teacher. Then I become I'm working in a graduate school of education. Then
Wow.
then I start producing videos for my position there, and then decided to stop doing that because I hated it, and start producing video myself. And I've won several awards
Oh
for
wow.
projects that I've produced in film festivals. But then I could see the writing on the wall. Plus, I mean, I'm getting older and it's getting tougher to schlep the equipment around and it's
Sure.
heavy and and these are long hours and my back is complaining and my legs are complaining. So I saw myself heading for retirement and I'm not rolling in money, but I could see if I was careful, I could manage
Right. Right.
because, so much of my income was self-produced.
Right.
And then, do you want me to go there? Should In 2020,
Please.
I was invited to participate in a charity video called "Pass the Candy Cane," and it was a bunch of my colleagues were getting together and producing a video that was intended to be available around the world. And what people basically did was they took a candy cane from off screen and they passed it along in front of them, looked at it, and then passed it on. And then all of this footage was combined into a narrative where people all over the world, the candy cane kept changing and everything.
Oh
The
wow.
more
Yeah.
hits it got, the more money was raised for food insecure people.
That's
This was
wonderful.
during COVID.
Hmm.
And Christmas is not my favorite time of the year, I have
Mm.
to say. I find it very stressful, but more than that, I find it very forced.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the
I understand.
jollity and all the truisms that on the 26th go out the window and everybody's,
Back
back to the way they
back to
were
the way they were.
before. Yeah. So I really did not want to participate on camera, but I was sort of cajoled into it And I said, only if I could create my own character. And they said, sure, sure. Well, what do you want to be? I said, I don't know. And they said, why don't you be an elf? And I said, all right, I'll be an elf, provided this elf is grumpy and belligerent and moody and non-cooperative. And by the end of the shoot, I'm trying to remember if we did the actual, the in-place shooting. I think we did it all in one day with a green screen behind us.
Hmm.
And at the end, the producer just said, this character, this elf, is wonderful. Does he have a name? And without missing a beat, I said, Charcoal. Well, he fell on the floor and started laughing so hard and saying, Charcoal the elf, Charcoal the elf. It's incredible. You've got to run with this. You've got to run with it. So
I
I
love
picked
it.
it up and put it down. COVID started becoming non-COVID, and I was still busy, just not as busy. And as I said, I saw retirement looming ahead, and I'm fine with that. I visualized liking retirement,
Yeah.
but I decided to try my hand on it, at it. And I'm not going to say the rest is history because I find that such an adage. But I played with it. I read chapters uh, to people as they evolved, and people are looking at me like, I didn't know you could write, and
Isn't that great?
this, yeah, this is great. But here's the turning point. This is a great interview. You don't have to ask me a single question. I'll just keep talking.
It's that's the thing I learned is, hey, this is a conversation between friends. Tell me all you want to tell me.
There you go. But I was down at the Jersey Shore, and friends of ours had rented a house. So I was there, and they're school teachers. And I said, could I read this to you? Because at the time I thought I was writing a children's book. And it was kind of, where is this book going? I don't quite see this as being a 26-page children's book. And I had 5 chapters, and I said, before I
Oh my
do any more
goodness.
work, could I read this? I mean, they weren't very long chapters. Uh, and the teacher, one was a teacher, one was a principal, and they just looked at me very quietly, and they said, that was amazing. How long did it take you to write that? And I said, about a week. And they said, what?
Oh my goodness.
And they said, I said, please, I want your criticism. They said, all right, this is great. You should continue running with this. But, and I said, okay, what's the but? And they said, um, you've written the whole thing in the voice of a narrator. We want to hear some dialogue. And I said, I don't
Oh,
understand. What does that mean? But we want to hear the characters. We want to hear their voices. We want to hear
yeah.
them speak. And I said, oh, okay. Came back 2 days later. 2 days later, came
Two
back. I
days
said,
later.
can I read it to you again now? And I read them the 5 chapters again, and there was all this, and he said, and she said, and they said,
Hmm. Hmm.
and all this dialogue going back and forth. And they looked at me like, when did you write all that? And I said, since last. You wrote all that in 2 days? I said, well, yeah. So how did you do that? And I said, well, I just wrote down whatever they said. And then all of a sudden, I realized that I wasn't writing the book. I was basically taking dictation.
Oh, I love that.
And
I love that.
there's a prologue to the book that opens with, you can assume the narrator is I.
Hmm.
I wake up in the middle of the night, there's somebody sitting in my bedroom. And I kind of, who are you and that sort of thing. And there's some give and take and interchange back and forth. And this person explains to me that they have a writing assignment for me,
Hmm.
assuming that I was at that point an established writer, my
Right.
character as an established writer. And my response is, you broke into my house in the middle of the night. I'm sorry. I came from a long way. I didn't realize, it would be night when I got to you, and I'm too excited. I couldn't wait. May I turn on the light? Go ahead, but don't be shocked by what you see.
Hmm.
Okay. I turn on the light, and there, seated in the easy chair by the fireplace, is a blue elf. And
Oh, which, by the way, listeners, that is charcoal. And
that
if
is
I if I, if I
charcoal.
if I can interrupt you for just a second, you can
Sure.
see the pen that RA is
Oh,
wearing right now, which is the artwork for Charcoal the Elf. And I'm definitely going to provide links so you can kind of look at the book and stuff. And it's a wonderful story. But go ahead. I just wanted to throw that in there. So
well,
that was
that was it.
charcoal. Yeah.
You stopped me at exactly the right point
Oh,
because I
I'm
have
sorry.
nothing else to say.
So that's wonderful, and I want to take a couple minutes to tease out a little bit about charcoal. A couple questions came to me as you're explaining the prologue of you and the character meeting charcoal in this time in your prologue of your book. Is that right? That
Correct. Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
where where this didn't really happen. This is in the prologue, right? Oh
Maybe.
well, maybe. I'm
Yeah.
kidding. I'm kidding. So a couple questions came to mind, and hopefully this kind of helps you maybe describe the character a little bit. And then I've got a question. Why did you choose? Well, maybe you didn't choose it. Did the name Charcoal just come to you again? I can't recall how that name.
Well, the name charcoal, basically at the end of this Pass the Candy Cane project, the producer said, "Does this character have a name?" And I went, "Charcoal," because I
Gotcha.
thought, what's the opposite of everything we think of with elves and Santa and
Gotcha.
ho ho ho? What gets stuffed in your stocking if you're bad is charcoal.
Yeah, I got you. Oh, I get it. Okay, now I got it. I got you.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
we had a campaign. The book is only out for a year. The first book is out for a year and a half. The second book is out now, not even quite a year yet. And then book three is coming out sometime this spring. But
Excellent.
last Christmas we had a T-shirt campaign that people, wanted to buy some merch, and it was a picture of the cover of book one, and at the bottom of it it said, "The only coal I want in my stocking."
Oh, I love that. Very nice. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I tell you what, looking at your website, I'm assuming you do a lot of that work yourself, or you've got some really talented
I have
people.
somebody
But
working with me for the website. Yeah.
it's amazing. You that
Wow,
it's
thank you.
amazing what you're doing. Yeah. So I have a question about
Sure.
charcoal, and I definitely want to come back to RA. I don't want to, but it's a question about charcoal, who I think maybe maybe the same people, and so at some level, maybe there's maybe not. I don't know. You tell me. I have a question for you. I remember you described earlier that charcoal was grumpy, belligerent, and you said some other descriptor
I don't
of
even remember what I said anymore.
yeah,
Yeah, uncooperative.
and
Yeah,
uncooperative.
yeah.
Why do you think that charcoal, or maybe you might be telling too much of the narrative, but why is charcoal? He's an elf. Why is
Hmm.
he grumpy, belligerent, and uncooperative?
Well, the response is actually quite easy, and this is where the story began to go in a completely unexpected direction. Charcoal doesn't look like any other elf because of his
Hmm.
hair. His hair is the wrong color. Nobody else up in Claus Town, up top as they call it, and
Hmm.
book one is called Up Top because the whole book takes place above the Arctic Circle, the first book. But his hair is completely atypical and stands out within the elf community. And elves don't like individualism. They're happy to be, en masse as a group. And he, from a very early age, he was subjected to bullying
Hmm.
and ridicule, and he was ostracized. As I said, even the reindeer wouldn't play any reindeer games with him. Ha ha ha! Get it?
I got it.
There's a
Nice.
lot of that in the book, in the books. But he begins acting out in book one and becomes very angry and bordering on the disruptive and the destructive. He starts cutting classes. He becomes very argumentative. He gets in fights. And I realize that this character is a morality story is evolving
Mm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And book one in particular is very much an anti-bullying book.
Okay.
Uh, and without giving too much away,
Sure, sure.
the head of Claustown, for whom Claustown is named, if he's dressed in red, okay,
Wonder who that might be. Hmm.
yeah, realizes he's about to lose one of his most gifted proteges, one of his most gifted next generation elves, and so he intervenes, and that's when the book turns into a story of self-discovery, self-growth, and awareness, and it turns into an adventure story with a really dangerous edge to it. And it's like, yeah, well, okay, any pretensions I might still have had about this being a children's story, right out the window. I began targeting it at that point for young adult, and
Sure, sure,
adults are buying it in reams and loving it. And I think they're relating to remembering their own difficulties growing up.
sure.
Their
Right.
preteen and teen years, difficult for everybody.
Yeah.
And Charcoal at the age of 2 is basically bordering on adulthood at that
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Elves grow faster than people. I mean, you
I,
probably knew that.
no, I didn't, but I love it. I love learning about the community, the people that are characters in your book, and I think it's amazing, especially about charcoal. I love how you're taking um, the story of an elf within the context of the story of Santa Claus and the North Pole, and reframing it in a way that's not necessarily directed towards children, but also at a time where people are really struggling now with a sense of self-worth
Yeah,
and self-identity and
yeah,
being influenced in ways that are probably not healthy in a time in our existence where there's a lot of strife and stuff amongst us. But to provide a story that can actually help us all to kind of realize and transform, which is a lot of what I'm trying to do with the podcast is telling stories, but I'm telling other people's stories. You're telling a story that's similar to redefining, reevaluating, self-discovery through a
mhm,
character, and I love it. I love it.
mhm.
We're
I'll interject. I have been asked by people, is charcoal you, meaning myself?
yeah,
And I have to say, not really.
yeah,
I had a rather idyllic childhood.
hmm,
I was very popular, subjected to bullying like any other child
sure,
was, but very, very minimal. And I'm not quite sure where this character comes from, other than the fact that in book two, he goes down below. Book one is called Up Top, book two is called Down Below, because he thinks he's learned enough about his own self worth that maybe he, accompanied by his cousin, who is the complete opposite of him, she's a glamour queen. She is the star young elf in Claustown, but she's bored and she's eager for adventure and she really likes her cousin. So they go down together to see if they can't learn from their scientific observations of humans why humans treat each other so badly.
sure, sure. Oh
And
wow,
as they
we
travel,
we need your story right now.
yeah, boy, do we ever.
Oh
Do
yeah,
we
yeah.
ever? Yeah. Yeah, the reason book three is not out yet is because this takes place in real time.
Hmm.
This story takes place exactly now in the modern world. And so I'm postponing book three as long as I can. I'm deeply mired in producing the audiobook for book two right now,
Hmm.
because I don't want it to be too dated right, as it comes out.
Sure.
It needs to be as up to date as it possibly can be. And you're talking about Santa as an alternative version of him. The book takes place in August.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love how you're creating a different framing of the story, and I love it. I think that's awesome. So it takes place in August.
Well, it's
Wow.
just before production season kicks in.
Well, I was getting ready to say, it
So
sounds like, they're going to get busy in
they're
September,
going to get
probably.
busy. Exactly. So Santa basically says, if you're going down, you got to go down now
Yeah,
because in
yeah.
another month, I can't spare anybody.
Right.
So,
I love it. I love it. I hear some echoes back to your business and applied mathematics and administration when you're talking about, hey, you guys got to get back here. We got stuff to do,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Um, we talked a little bit about themes in the book. You mentioned self-discovery, self-worth, and the anti-bullying themes. Are there any other themes that stand out that the book projects through the characters and their adventure?
Well, the book becomes a rite of passage for Charcoal and for Trixie, his cousin.
Hmm.
She is, fated and spoiled and very self-centered. Charcoal is deeply insecure and paranoid because of their upbringings. They're so
Hmm.
different from each other. So I would say, and then there is the fact that they keep traveling around the globe saying, why? Why are people doing this to each other?
Mm.
Why are they doing this to the planet? So the books do not try to come up with answers, but the books are forcing questions that I think a lot of people these days are avoiding because they're scary. People, the world seems to be spinning so out of control that it's easier to just turn the news off and uh,
Oh yeah.
involve yourself in your own little microcosm and not start asking, why is this stuff happening?
Right.
What is my responsibility towards it?
Hmm.
What can I do in my own little way to make this better?
Yeah.
And I just don't think there's a lot of that going on right now.
I I I I I, I
Especially amongst the young. I think, I'm sorry to cut you
yeah.
off. The
No,
young are
no.
scared. I know the young are scared. I
Yeah.
talk to young people. I have a lot of young people in my life. They are scared and they are angry.
Yeah.
I have been told more than once, look what you, the older people, have done to this world. How are
Yeah.
we going to exist? How are we going to survive?
Right. Right.
So, and I think what I'm trying to say in the books is you may survive, you may not survive, but you definitely will not survive if you do not involve yourselves in the solution.
Right. You can't be
And
a so-called innocent bystander because there are none.
right, and
When
that's the
all
way, I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
we as people who reinvent ourselves,
Hmm.
whatever the circumstances, some people do it, I think, because they're just ready for something new. They're bored with what they're doing.
Right.
Other people are thrust into a position where they have to reinvent
Right.
themselves.
Hmm.
But it becomes our responsibility. If you look around for help, if you ask for help, and if you find places where you can get help, you will receive it. But that's the key. You're asking, you're searching,
Right.
you're making it happen. And I think there's a fundamental loss of that understanding among a lot of people who just feel mired in despair and hopelessness.
Right.
If it's going
Right.
to happen, we have to make it happen. And if we don't try, it's definitely not going to happen.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And I think you said something earlier that I think tags along with that is there's there's a question that's not often asked, and I think the and you said it earlier is the why question.
Mhm.
Why is a very simple three-letter word, um, but why embeds itself with, in my opinion, curiosity, humility, um, and an openness to listen and learn.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I think when we ask um, if we're not asking the why questions, then we miss uh, all those pieces that are bringing us to where we are. And I wonder if in some way, and it seems like some of what you're telling me is the writing that you're doing is giving space in characters that are dealing with real time um, events to maybe from their perspective ask those why questions and
Mhm.
try to understand what's going on. And in a way that you're doing it, you're giving people maybe not necessarily answers, but maybe the courage to ask the question why.
I like to think that's true. Yeah, I do think that's an undercurrent in the books.
Hmm.
Um, you reminded me of something. I've had several people uh, tell me that there are times when they're faced with a conundrum and they have actually asked themselves, what would charcoal do?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and whoa, you know,
N- No, and I, I'm a big, I love epic novels. I love all of Tolkien's works. I mean, I love, and the depth of those stories, like yours. Uh, uh,
well, thank you. If I'm
well,
not
no,
gonna,
but I
uh,
can see the adventure and the characters being developed is the depth of that story causes us to look deeper. It's not to get into a religious thing, but the scripture is a story. It's not a history book. It's not a science book. It can be a morality guide, but it's actually the stories of people who are looking at the deeper questions of
yeah,
life and
yeah,
trying to wrestle with that.
yeah.
And I think those stories, like the one that you're writing, helps us to do that, to dig deeper and to go deeper. And part of that is what would charcoal do? I like that. I like that. I'm
I,
excited.
you were excited. Can you just imagine how I felt?
I can. I can see it in your
Yeah.
voice and the way you talk about your book and the work that you're doing. I sit here and I'm thinking of a couple of things, and I want to come back to you for just a second. But
Yeah.
so you've written book one, you've written book two, you're working on the audio book for book two.
Right.
Book three is in the work. I'm wondering, have you? Not all authors think that way, and that's fine. I mean, have you thought about what comes after book three? Do you have something kind of
So
stirring?
let me get book three done. Um, uh, um, yes, I mean, if the books take off, as of course any writer hopes their books will, there's always room for another one. I have there's a book four back there
Oh, I thought there might
because
be.
part it's been an interesting journey because I discovered a mythological creature that is completely forgotten in modern Western culture.
Right.
It's a malevolent creature that stems from the myths of an extinct tribe that lived down in Tierra del Fuego, down at the tip of South America. And guess what? They're not extinct. And they are
Oh.
very much not mythological. And without, spoiling book three too much, and I will say that there's a cliffhanger at the end of book two, which even I didn't know how they were going to get out of. And they did. They figured it out, and I just slow down, But we discover that there is a malignant, malevolent force that delights in creating misery amongst humans.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
to the point where they can influence vast masses of people to do really stupid, hurtful, bad things. And so, book four, should it ever appear, could very easily turn into, a confrontation between the good and the bad, the yin and the yang, which
Interesting.
is referred
Interesting.
to in
Hmm.
yeah, in book two.
Oh,
So
I see that coming.
well, thank you. I like your positivity. That's
Hey,
great.
hey, I can tell. It's interesting. I made a note in the some of my things that I was going to talk about. I have another friend who's a published author, and she's now a screenwriter, and just an amazing woman who wound up getting back into writing and then teaching, and then stories developed from the teaching that she was doing.
Mhm.
Um, and she tells me a story of her driving down the road one day, and she's listening to a song on the radio, and this story starts flooding her mind. She literally
Wow.
has to write it as she's driving. And I wrote
Pull
down
over,
to.
everybody, anybody listening out there, pull over on the side of the road.
I told her the same thing. I said, "Don't do that in Georgia." She said, "Don't do that in any state." So,
Yeah.
but the thing that came to me was this: a sentence that I wrote that I wanted to just ask you what you think about that is stories choose their authors.
Mm. I'm giving a talk Friday at a club in New York City in Manhattan, and one of the themes that came up as a bullet point for my, it's only going to be a 20-minute talk during lunch, but that almost verbatim came up as one of my themes that the
Okay.
stories, yeah, the stories choose their authors.
Yeah.
It's certainly, I can't explain it in any other way with this book because I was some kind of a receptor. And as I said, the initial idea for Charcoal came out of just a silly, fun video that we were trying to help people.
Right.
And I never ever dreamed that the story would go down the road it's gone down and just keep evolving. I showed it to some of my friends in publishing and they said, "Oh, this needs to be much longer. I feel really cheated." I had written the
Oh
story
wow.
from start to finish. So book 3 in some sort of vague outline, which is rapidly falling apart, was written. And one of my dear friends, who's retired publishing, said, "This needs to be a trilogy." And I said, "Oh, come on." It's like, that's so pretentious. Really, a trilogy? She said, "No, absolutely." And she said, "You need to run with this because if it catches on, it's going to catch on big."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went, okay, what, what else am I doing? So.
I love that. I Do you ever foresee this becoming a presented in an alternative way than published writing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I wrote it. Everybody who reads the book says this is cinematic.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah.
say they can see the movie unrolling in front of them.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
said, good. Hopefully a producer will, TriStar, Disney, you listening? You know.
All I say is just remember little Eric down in Savannah, Georgia someday if that happens. Oh, there was this guy.
You're going to be in book 3, Eric. Watch out.
Oh,
Or maybe book 4. We'll see.
the obnoxious padre. Oh my goodness. I want to come back to you for just a quick second. Our time is coming to a little bit of a close. But I want to come back to you for just a minute. You had this career that was creative, and administrative and teaching and you talked about how someone saw the story and that encouraged you and I wonder what is it like for you to be in this midst of this time in life. We're both. I mean, 60s or the fifth, the 40s, and what is the 40s or the 20s? Blah blah blah, all that stuff. I mean, I think about my parents in our age group.
Wow.
They seemed like they were so much, but we still have so much life to give and so much that we want to offer. What's it like for you to be doing something that I may be making an assumption here, something that you really are passionate about and is it giving you new life? What's that like for you?
Wow. I mean, I need to preface that by saying everything I've done, I've been passionate about
Oh,
because for some reason was always the Pied Piper or the person that refused to fit into the pegs and the squares and all that. Uh, so whenever I did anything, it would always be, I wonder what that's like, and throw myself into it. I'm just that type of personality.
sure.
What is this like? Um, the joy that writing has brought me was so totally unexpected.
Mm,
Uh, I just, scribble, scribble, scribble. All of a sudden, I'm like, and I can't say I'm weighing over sentences, but I go back and I tweak and now that I'm doing the audiobook, I'm saying, they felt like they were going to explode in the book way too many times. I didn't realize that when I was writing. Can't change it now, it's published.
Sure.
But the process of writing, it's just another aspect of creativity.
Right. Right.
Playing music, singing, teaching is a very creative thing if you let it
Oh yeah,
be.
absolutely.
Uh, my whole life has been spent really, I'm what people call a creative. I just never thought of writing as all that creative because all I was writing was annual reports and speeches. And now all of a sudden, especially writing fiction, and funnily enough, if there is such a word, I was never. I've read fiction. I've read lots of fiction, but my reading was generally history and how-tos.
Right.
And here I
Right.
am crafting a fantasy trilogy where anything, absolutely anything, is possible. So I need to decide what I will accept and what I will not accept.
Right.
I
Oh
mean,
wow.
these are elves. They can fly, they can disappear, they can change their shape, they can speak any language, human and non, and many that don't even exist anymore. But they are still mortal creatures. They still have
Mm,
a beginning, a middle, and an end,
right.
and they have to be careful. Danger can hurt them. There's an
Okay.
episode in book one where one of them finds this out, let's just say to a sad end.
Hmm.
So they're not just these little happy critters. So and then the creativity of taking totally fictitious characters. They interact with a lot of mythological creatures as well because they can see creatures we can't because we're human,
Right.
and these things are beyond our capacity. So bringing these in and bringing them out, and when is this, and it it becomes such an amazing and creative process. I can Many a day was spent dressed in my pajamas all day. I'm just going to tweak just this one
Sure.
section. And 3 chapters later, it's now 5:30 in the evening, and yeah,
Did I eat today?
exactly, yeah.
Well, that tells me a couple things. When someone is that engaged in something for that long and time seems to stand still and nutrition seems to fall away, you are doing what you were designed and formed to do. And I wrote down something as you're talking, and it sounds like um, part of the reinvention for you is a freedom.
Oh yeah, yeah. Or freedom is what allows me to reinvent. Maybe we could turn that
Ooh,
around.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Oh.
watching series 5 now of Only Murders in the Building.
Mhm.
And just last night, the Steve Martin character said something. I nearly fell out of my chair. He said, "Well, reinvention is the key to a long life."
Oh,
And yeah, I said, "Okay,
I agree. Yeah,
RA," I said, "you've got to mention that in your talk with Eric today."
yeah.
Now, then we can talk about, okay, is it a long life all that it's cracked up to be? That's a whole different conversation.
Right, right.
Yeah, but
Or a fulfilled life. Let's say that.
I'll accept that. I'll accept that. Yeah,
Yeah, we're wordsmithing here a little bit. I
yeah,
like
yeah,
it. I like
yeah.
it. No, reinvention is the key to long life or fulfilled life or whatever life makes sense
Let's
to you.
change long life to fulfillment.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll
there we
put that
go.
in our books. I like that. Well, it seems like that retirement for you is not retirement as we were taught.
I'm
Uh,
busier than I've ever been.
isn't that yes? Isn't that? But you're having. But you're. Are you having fun?
Most of the time.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Uh, but here's the thing. I think freedom and being able to do that is do you feel like you get to choose how you spend your time?
Yes, but
Okay.
I've always been that way.
Okay. Okay.
Because,
I,
yeah,
I want to
it,
know the secret to that. We're going to have an off camera conversation about
well,
how we do that.
I will say that there are certain types of people who can work for themselves successfully
Yeah.
and others that can't.
Right.
And I don't think of it as discipline, but it is enormous discipline.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I get that. I get that.
yeah.
All right, we're not quite done yet. I want to give folks a chance to get to know you a little bit better, and I really want to thank you for being a guest. You're so much. We got to stay in touch after this for sure.
I
Oh,
100% agree. When we
absolutely.
had our initial meeting conversation, I mean, talk about two people who are in stride, together.
Yeah.
I went ice skating last time there was ice, and just, everyone skating in unison, whether they intended to or not, because
Right.
otherwise you just crash into each other.
Right.
And this is what it felt like from the word go. The two of us
Oh,
just absolutely, you know, a pace with each other. Yeah, just
you
absolutely.
are a word guru, and you use imagery to convey message. I love it. The
Thank
idea of
you.
ice skating in a group. That's You're going to do great, brother. You're going to do great. All right,
Okay, thank you.
I want my listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So I have something I call the lightning round. It's just four real quick questions, but you
Sure.
answer how you like.
Okay.
And I think I shared these with you, but just real straightforward, just for fun, just for fun. The first one is there a book or a quote that changed you?
I have to say everything I've read has changed me,
Hmm,
because it's
good.
expanded me. It's allowed me to see the broader and ever broadening picture. Is there one single quote or even a book that resonates in my mind? No, all of them,
Uh,
all of the
yeah,
above.
I like that. I think I don't think anyone's ever answered that, but I think I hear what you're saying. Just knowing you from what we've talked about, that makes perfect sense. You being a creative and someone who's read a lot, and that you've taken in what you've read, and that's changed you. I get that. That's great. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Where is the your favorite place that you've ever traveled?
Oh, that's easy. I spent a week in Nice in France doing French
Mm.
immersion, and I realized that I am happier along the French Riviera, that
Oui,
nobody
oui,
knows
monsieur.
about. Yeah. But I've been back several times and I get absolutely goofy when I'm there. I can't stop smiling.
I'll bet.
I have to say that is my number one favorite place in the world.
A story you can write. The successful writer travels the Riviera, the French Riviera again. A side story for you.
Doing research.
Doing research.
Yes,
Yes,
doing research
yes,
that I can write off.
love
So,
it. I can hear the administrator,
uh,
applied mathematics guru in you saying that. All right, all right. Here's an easy one. Other than writing, what is one small thing that brings you joy?
small thing. It's a huge thing that brings me joy is my music,
Mm,
both playing and singing music. It has kept me as sane as I am. It has kept me relatively sane through the worst crises that I, just like anyone, has had to go through in my
yeah.
life. Death, separation, money problems, a sense of helplessness and doubt and being lost. Music. So
Oh, I
it's
love
not
it.
a small thing. Music. Maria Callas once said, music is enormous. She said,
Mm,
people don't realize how immense music is.
yeah, I get that. I get that. It's such an anchor sometimes for some of us, isn't
And
it?
pizza, small thing, pizza.
New York pizza?
Sure. A New
Okay.
Haven pizza. New
New Haven
Haven
pizza.
pizza.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, last lightning round question. A person or persons who has immensely influenced your life in a positive and lasting way.
Well, there are a goodly number of them, but I'm going to say my grandmother, my paternal
Hmm.
grandmother. Um, there are many people who have influenced me. I just mentioned one of them in passing before, Maria
Sure.
Callas, and her approach to creativity, to creation. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was a very simple, not very well educated person, but she had her head screwed on straight when it came to life. And she, in the nicest possible way, she told you exactly what she thought, and what she thought was generally spot on,
Hmm.
as the British say. And I remember the day I called her up, I was in high school, and she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Nothing. I just called to say hi." And we chatted on the phone for 45 minutes. And that was a coming of age experience for me, because after that, she wasn't grandma anymore. She was one of my best buds.
Oh
And
wow.
we used to go out drinking together.
I love it. Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
I have such a wonderful respect and comfort level around older people, of which I'm rapidly becoming
Mhm.
one, because of the insight, because of the wisdom and knowledge they have accrued and how they can share it with us.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful? We I think everyone I've spoken to, like you, has had multiple people, but there's one person that stands out that, um, for whatever reason, at a specific time in life or over time, has really inspired us or grounded us or given us an anchor to help
Yeah.
us to move forward. That's wonderful that you had your grandmother. What was her name?
Yeah.
Her first name?
Josephine.
Josephine. Oh,
I mean, her first name was Grandma.
oh,
She-
Grandma. Okay, we'll remember Grandma
yeah.
Josephine for sure. All right, here's the final question for our time together, and this is the one that I ask every guest. Um, all right, you're having coffee with a friend, um, and there's something going on in their lives. They're kind of in the latter stages of their career, not yet ready to retire, but thinking about a change. They're facing or considering a major vocational change, maybe, or they want to chase a dream or do something
Mhm.
differently that they
Mhm.
may not have had the courage to do. And they come to you and they say, I'm looking for your advice. What would you tell them?
Believe it or not, this is the easiest one for me, because I would sit down and lay out a plan for them, with them. And my first question would be, can you afford to do this?
Ah, yeah,
What is your financial situation like? If this does not pan out, can you afford to take this as a loss? Will it affect the quality of the rest of your life?
yeah,
Um, and along with that, yeah, that would be my first question. And in fact, I asked myself that when I left a steady paying job at the school where I was working, the graduate school I was working, and began working as a videographer. Um, can I afford to do this?
yeah,
Because I know the jobs are going to be very sporadic. It's not going to be a steady income anymore. And I had enough money in a savings account to last me for a whole year. If I was frugal, I knew
mhm,
what my, you can certainly calculate your annual expenses
sure,
within reason. And if at the end of that year I had seriously depleted that amount of money, I knew that this was not going to work out for me.
sure,
And
yeah,
at the end of that first year, I had exactly as much money in the bank as I did at the start of the year. So that was my answer. But that is the very first thing I would tell them about it. And I would also tell them, just because you have a dream and you follow that dream, do not believe Thoreau. it will not necessarily come through. I think it was Thoreau who said that. It was one of those, wacky 19th century philosophers. Um, just because you have a dream and you pursue it fervently does not mean it's going to happen. And you
Yep.
need to be prepared for that. So,
I I understand that, and sometimes I'll add to that. Um, you may achieve what you think was your dream, but once you realize it wasn't as good as you thought it was going to be,
uh-huh.
but that doesn't have to be the end of the dreaming. It
That
it
is
may it may lead to
absolutely
something
true.
else. Yeah.
Well, there you go. And that's the key. If you don't say yes, then you know what you've got.
Yeah.
And you have to be all right with that. If you say yes, it's a very scary thing, but you don't know where it's going to take you. It may not necessarily take you where you think you want to go. Um, the pragmatic side of my mind. If you lay out a plan, if you really give this some real thought and you have an idea of where you want to be in 1 year, in 5 year, in 10 years, that also informs the decisions that you make now
Absolutely.
because you need to make decisions that are informed by your master plan. It can't just be, helter skelter and just haphazard.
I,
Life requires a lot of organization.
it does. I hear that in your applied mathematical mind. But no, I get that, and I love that. And the last person I interviewed prior to you said the same thing. It's great to have this dream. It is. We all need something to be working towards. We need a
Mhm.
purpose in our lives.
Yeah.
And the worst thing I think for some of us is to have something that you want to do and you never tried it, and then you live maybe with regret.
Regret and wondering, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
What if?
I
Yeah,
love the idea of what you're saying, and you must have a plan that will sustain you while you pursue what it is what you're pursuing.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. Nice. I love it. All right, my new
Maybe I
friend.
should have become a mathematician. To hell with writing.
No, I think you're on the right track, my friend. Although, why do you have to choose one? We talked about multiple streams of vocation.
You
Hey.
are talking to the poster boy for can't make up your mind.
That's okay. Life is all about freedom and flexibility, right? Maybe charcoal will teach us more about that as we
We'll
read, and
see.
we'll see. I
We'll
can't wait.
see.
I can't.
Yeah.
All right, I want to thank you so much for being a part of Never Too Late NTL Stories of Reinvention. I'm just so grateful for your honesty and just sharing your wonderful story and sharing the story of Charcoal the Elf. I can't wait to reach book 2 and 3. I'm still working on the early stages of book 1, but I'll get there. I'll get there.
Thank you.
For my
Thank you. I really
listeners,
appreciate that. Yeah.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you,
And
sir.
I need to sign those books for you at some point.
Oh, I'd love that. Yes, please do.
Yeah.
For those who are listening, if you want to learn more about RA and Charcoal the Elf and his works, there'll be a link in the show notes where you can find the his website. We'll also provide links to Amazon.com. He's going to show you copies of the book. Aren't they? I love the artwork, and you've had someone actually design those. I just love it.
Yes, yes. A very
Yeah.
talented artist named John Bates designed the covers for me.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it, and I know that I believe you have some social media links and things that we can share in the show notes,
Yeah,
where
sure.
people and I know that people. I think on your website there's a way that people can actually write and just kind of share some of their insights that
Yes.
they've had from the
Yes, they
books.
go to the charcoaltheelf.com. If they go to
There
the
you go.
website, they can
Perfect.
start a dialogue with either Charcoal or RA. It depends, I guess, who's monitoring it that day.
I love it. I love it. And for those who are listening, I want to thank you all so much for being a part of this community. NTL is a conversation about people's stories, and hopefully it inspires you to plan, but go out and chase the dream that you have. And if this conversation resonated with you today, just take a moment. Please subscribe, leave a comment or review, and share the episode with a friend who really needs to hear it. That small act can really help us grow this channel and grow this community that's emerging. You can listen to Never Too Late NTL on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and you can also watch full video episodes on YouTube. On YouTube. All links are in the show notes. We want to thank you so much for being with us today. RA, thanks again for being with me. I really appreciate it. We can't wait to read more about Charcoal the Elf. And we thank you again. Tune in next week for our next guest Thanks for listening to NTL. Have a wonderful day.